Welcome back to another episode of the Elevated Chat Room. Elevate your mind, elevate your life. It's your host, Lonzo Jones. Man, we back at it. I got a guest with us like always, a special guest, Mr. Martez Hill. But now, before I introduce him, let me introduce the topic for tonight. So our topic tonight is priced out. How young people can build a future in an affordability crisis. So Mr. Martez Hill, man, he's a newlywed husband. He's a business leader, and he's also a critical thinker. All right, Martez, man, kind of tell them a little bit more about yourself.
Well, a lot of people that might run across this will know me. I've grown up in the Shoals my whole life, basically. Was born in Russellville, lived there for 21 years.
Okay.
And then after that, moved over to Florence, lived there for about the last 7 years, and now I'm in Athens area, so spend a lot more time in Huntsville. And part of the reason I came on your podcast today is, you know, some of the events that happened earlier this year got me thinking. It's just like, all right, I need to contribute a little bit more to the community. Let's be positive, because if people like me don't step up, that's going to lead to worse outcomes down the road. And I really want to kind of speak to young people and use the struggles that I've had early in my life, the things I've overcome, to have them take some of that and for them to take those lessons and possibly apply them.
Yeah. Sounds like you looking to step into like a mentorship and role. That's kind of what I'm pulling from them. When you say struggles, like, do you mind, like, there's so many different struggles out in the world. Like, what's one main struggle that comes to your mind that you don't mind sharing, like that you experience?
Well, this one is going to be me being pretty vulnerable, but you know, growing up, I mean, I was in a single parent household. And when I got older and reached adulthood, obviously I wanted to do things a lot differently. And a lot of the things that I've seen or noticed in myself is just like, well, we need to change this. Also think when you have like a single mom, it's harder for a man to grow when he doesn't have a set father figure around to teach him certain lessons. And sometimes you learn those lessons the hard way. And sometimes you can learn through osmosis by watching other people make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not going to do that.
So we're talking about the affordability crisis that's going on. At least it feels like that, and it seems to be that way. So My first question that I want to throw at you is, why does everything feel unaffordable right now?
Well, most people in my age group, so I'm a millennial, relatively young one. I'll add, I think for us and people in Generation Z, I think it's going to be harder for them to attain the American dream. Part of that has been policies that our government made long before we were thought about.
Okay.
One prime example is 1971, Richard Nixon removed the US dollar from the gold standard. I think that was a colossal mistake, and I will say why. So basically, our purchasing power for the US dollar was 100%. The CPI was 40.5, and that was in 1982 to 1984. So wasn't thought about then. Was born in 92. In the current year, our purchasing power is at 12.5%, and the CPI is 323.2. So basically, the reason that the Nixon administration made this change is that dollars couldn't be created faster than the U.S. was willing to redeem them in gold. So they kind of reached a hard limit. So they basically reached a point where they could not print more money because it was tied to gold, and it's just like, well, we need more dollars, but we don't have the gold to support it. So basically they swapped over to base it off oil, therefore making the dollar more of a fiat currency. So it's not really tied to anything. So as a result, over the years, we've had deficits, lots of budget discussions and fights between Democrats and Republicans. Not taking a side on this, want to be clear on that. I think both parties are to blame, and politicians in general are to blame. So basically, they just kept printing money, and now we're in trillions of dollars of debt because we overprinted money and spent like there was no tomorrow. And basically, our dollar has lost majority of its purchasing power.
Yeah.
We're at 12.5% of what we were in the 1980s.
That's crazy when you think about it.
Really troubling. I don't really know how we're going to fix it, but I don't think things like socialism will fix it. I think that's only going to make the problem worse, and we're all going to be worse off. Also, another thing I'll add, let's talk about home prices. So the average home price in 2000 was $207,000, and the median new home price was $169,000. So today, that price is $332,677. So that's a huge increase from 2000 and a 51% increase from 2018, which was not that long ago. So the median home price, or average home price, nationwide in 2018 was $259,300. And now, going on from that, it's $462,206. So nationwide, it's a 56% increase. And then for this area, and I base these numbers off the Huntsville area, 2018, the median home price was $220,500, and now it is $332,677. So what that has done, and is made it to where younger people who are just getting their careers started, they're struggling to reach an entry point in the house buyers market. So they're having to be renters longer. One thing I'll add is if you get an entry-level job and your salary's like 40 something thousand or 50,000, anything like that, that's going to make it a little bit harder depending on what you buy. So I think now people have to try and find bargains, and they just have to make a plan and stretch things out longer.
Gotcha. I think that I've seen a lot of people now that have side hustles. It's like you just can't have, either you're working a lot of overtime to afford certain things, unless you're just fortunate to have a really, really, really good job outside of entry level. But like you said, with these entry level positions, the good thing about that is that, hey, I got time because I don't have a family. I might have a wife, but I don't have kids. So I'm not stretched to the max. So it's like, well, let me get a part-time job, work overtime, or get a side hustle just so I can have the down payment and the money up front, and then I can kind of cruise once I get everything set. But yeah, man, it I remember back in the day, like way back, my granddad, Tom, he was telling me how like he could buy a house, for $25,000. I'm like, how? You can buy a house, have 2 cars, living off, a small salary,
right?
So and I see you talking about the dollar, how it's not backed by gold anymore. So what is inflation? I hear that term inflation. Is that like a real thing? Is that like something that was created? Like, do you know what inflation really is? Like, what's your opinion on inflation?
So inflation, in the simplest terms, is the average increase in prices across the board year over year. And I'm glad you brought that up. COVID was really disruptive to our economy. And I don't think we really realized it at the time. So when COVID first started happening, I got, per se, my first good job.
Yeah.
So I was making money, more money than I'd ever made in my whole life. So I was just like, oh, I would turn on the news and it's just like, all these people are struggling because of COVID. Well, personally, I couldn't necessarily relate to that as well because I was finally making some real money. It was things that I was stressed about from 2016 to 2019. I mean, that's just how it was then. But basically, inflation. So let's walk through that. So in 2018, inflation was 1.9% for that year. 2019 was 1.4%. 2020, it rises a little bit because COVID's starting up. They were starting to shut down the economy, the government, basically everything. So that was 3.9%. 2021, 7.1%.
Jeez.
So this is after the presidential election for 2022. So in 2022, the inflation rate was 11.4%, 5% in 2023. You would say that was a significant improvement, but prices are still going up. There's no rollbacks on the previous year's inflation. And last year it was 2.5%. So inflation is going down. I think the issue that most young people are seeing right now and why they are more left-leaning or more open to socialist type policies is that even though inflation is going down, I'm sure Trump will come out and say inflation is at 1.9% or something this year, and he'll say it's a big win, which I guess in the broad spectrum of things it is, but the fact is the prices aren't going back down to what they were. So unfortunately, I think that's a reality that we have to accept and live with. Now, I have certain things that our government can probably do to help that a little bit, but we won't go into that at this moment. But I think those are the biggest reasons that young people are struggling. And when I say young people, obviously I mean like college students. And I don't want to go too far into this tangent, but I mean, you know, we got told in school, it's just like, hey, go to college, get your degree. Mm-hmm. It don't really matter what it is as long as you love it. I think that is poor advice. Poor advice. If you have something you're wanting to do that, but also have something stable to where you are able to make a good living.
I agree with that. I kind of tell people that want to be entrepreneurs, but they got a job. I was like, well, you can't just leave your job if you got responsibilities. You can, build your side hustle while you're working your 9 to 5.
Absolutely.
You don't have to quit that and then just be out there struggling and stressed out. Like, no, just realize that it may just take you a little bit longer, but you'll get there. And I think sometimes we got to get out of that microwave mentality. We want it now instant gratification, instead of delayed satisfaction. It's something that this generation, which I'm the older side of the millennials, which is crazy when I think about it. But yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, man. And I'm thinking that inflation is still high. Like you talking about how the numbers have dropped, like I said, but we don't feel it. We don't see it. So you could tell me all day that inflation is better, but unless my groceries are a whole lot cheaper, like, man, our groceries went through the roof probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like we was cruising, it was fine. And it's like, man, I'm almost paying a third, almost, a fourth more or a fourth or a third more than what I was paying.
I agree with that. And that's something I've noticed too. I noticed something was off when I would go to Walmart and things that would normally cost $50. I get to the cash register and it's like, oh, this is $125. What is going on? And I'll circle back to your point about people like wanting to be entrepreneurs, but they're working their main job and they're doing the other thing on the side. All right, I got a story. So in 2022, I had the bright idea to do a career change. Keep in mind, I was not married. I lived by myself. I was able to take that risk. Would I have taken that same risk if I had a wife and children at home? Absolutely not. And I'll say at first, it started off well. Went into sales and it was all commission.
Never like them.
Yeah, I think we spoke a few times during that period. But no one told me about, well, you're going to have slow periods. Like there may be this 6 months period where you won't really make that much money. Also, based off the sales you make, if someone wants to drop what you sold them, you got to pay that back. Yeah, that was a big realization for me, but I was also thankful that I did not have wife at home that I had to explain to, oh yeah, I'm not getting paid this week because I didn't make enough sales, or everyone wanted to drop the coverage that I signed them up for.
That you knew they probably, like you mentioned before, they probably couldn't even afford it from the jump.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. So, I mean, when you're doing entry-level sales positions, I think most people would be more successful if they're selling a tangible product to people that they can actually use. I'll give a little bit more details about what industry I was in. It was insurance, which insurance is a good thing. I think everyone should have insurance. But I noticed that a lot of people I've run across, they did not really have the money to have that product or keep it. So why would I go forward with selling someone a product when they're probably not going to keep it very long because they literally can't afford it? Like, we're going over what they can afford. They can't.
Yeah. It's all about them numbers, though. It's all about meeting quotas and goals and pressure from supervisors and managers. I mean, I've been there. I used to sell insurance too.
Yeah.
So I've been there. But when I sold insurance, I was also, I think I was also working at Walmart part-time. And then I was also selling Avon part-time. So I was just kind of hustling while I was in grad school, just, getting by and being able to, eat decently, for the most part. But let me ask you this. So we've kind of hit on the young generation. But my question is this, is how is this impacting young people differently than previous generations? Like expectations and timelines, like careers, marriage, kids, like you kind of talked about the home ownership, but how is it affecting this generation different than it affected older generations?
So I think a lot of young people are growing up and realizing that the things that they were told their whole lives wasn't really accurate. It might have been accurate for the people telling them those things.
Yeah.
So say we graduated in 1998. Our young adult years are going to be a lot more different than right now for someone that's graduating college. Say someone goes to school for a liberal arts degree and they think they'll go work for a nonprofit. And then they graduate, and they can't find a job. Well, first, they're going to feel like they've been lied to. Second, they're going to get angry. And three, after the anger settles, they're going to be depressed. I mean, actually, Gen Z and most millennials as well. I mean, I know so many people that are on antidepressants, anxiety medicines, almost everybody. So that's especially with young people. Older people, maybe not as much. But I think that's just some of the things. Obviously, things are going to be a lot more stressful. I remember times after I graduated college, I was like, man, I'm doing something wrong. I'm not making the progress I want. And this is before I had mindset shift. So, I mean, I worked in college. I worked 2 jobs and went to school. So I work at Foodland. Then I worked at Lowe's too. So I did both of those things. I would work most nights, went to college. Don't know how I managed to have a social life, but somehow I did. Didn't really study very much, but I did fairly well in most of my classes. And I always ask myself, I was like, I didn't even study for any of these tests. I didn't study the whole semester. How did I pass? Went to work. So basically, when I was in college at UNA, how my day would go is I would wake up at 6:30 or 7. I'd go to class till about 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Then I go to work, and then I get home about 11 or 12 and go to sleep and do it again.
That's a grind.
It is.
But it had a purpose for it, though. So that's the difference. You know, some kids that were young, they're just waking up, doing whatever and going back to sleep. They don't have no type of goal set, no type of vision. And you're going to need that to help counter the mental thoughts you're going to get. Like, man, this ain't going to never work. Or, man, I ain't going to never get to this point. Or, man, is this all life has to offer? So, like, you have to have goals, vision, plans, dreams. You have to, or you're going to fall into that depression. And I know you was talking about home ownership earlier. I know we bought our second home after we sold our first one, bought our second home during the pandemic. And I can tell you right now that it would not be smart if we bought the same house right now with the interest rate and how much homes have went up. My house is worth almost $175,000 to $200,000 more than what it was in just 5 years. And the interest rate we got was less than, I think, 2, but now it's like 6.5, 5.5. Like, I wouldn't even consider buying it because the note would be through the roof.
Right.
So,
but I mean, it's the same thing for renting as well. I mean, majority of people you see renting, especially where I live, they're usually spending between $1,300 to $1,800 a month on rent. So I guess now the thing is, well, I'm paying this much in rent. Would I rather own or just rent? Now, there's some things you got to consider when making that decision. Like, for example, if you own the house, if your air conditioner decides to go out, you got to pay for that out of pocket.
Yeah.
If you're renting, you can just call and be like, hey, the air went out. When can you send someone? Because technically you're paying for that in your rent. Mm-hmm. You also don't have to worry about property taxes. That's a whole different subject. I think what I've realized as I've started making more money is I became a lot more conservative financially. I always had, and everyone that doesn't make over 60, 70K a year, they have this thought. So if they're making 30K, they're like, man, if I can make 60, 70K, we can put this much back. Well, when I started making that much money, inflation was going up. So obviously that money didn't go as far as it did. I also noticed over years that $100 did not go as far as it used to.
Spending quick, $100 like a $20 bill now.
Yes. And I would just be confused. I'm just like, okay, I just got paid today. How did I spend $200 and I just bought stuff I needed?
Yeah. And sometimes you can go to Walmart and buy $100 worth of groceries and really didn't even buy nothing to cook for the night. It was just all snacks and stuff getting ready for school, the school next 2 weeks, for the kids. I'm like, dang, I ain't even bought nothing to cook for the night. Now we got to eat out. Right. I done bought groceries, stocked up, but nothing that we can really like cook tonight. And then if you do decide to cook, it's like, well, let me go to Walmart and grab some. Now, sometimes you can come out on top. But the good thing is, as compared to eating out, is more healthier when you cook, and then hopefully you'll have leftovers, depending on how the kids eat
Yes.
for that night.
So I think a big thing to help cut into that is, I've learned that maybe we shouldn't eat out every day, maybe once a week, maybe not more than 3 times a week, and most of those should be on the weekends. I think the other thing, too, that can help conserve people's finances is if you have leftovers, Please eat them. Do not buy groceries and go out to eat same night. I used to do that. So bad habit. Bad habit.
Yourself, huh?
Yes. So if there's anyone young watching this, don't do it. I know it doesn't seem fun. Delay the fun. And then once you get to the point where you need to be, things will be a lot easier. And that brings me to something that Steve Harvey said. So I started listening to a lot of his stuff in 22 while I was in the middle of the career change and things like that. The biggest thing I think that young people need is they need to have a belief that they can turn things around regardless of what's going on around them. I know that is very hard to say. I know most people will probably hear that and be like, this guy is absolutely delusional. Mindset is a big thing because in 2018, I actually got fired from a job and I was just like, what am I doing? You got to get it together. So I actually started reading a book called Think and Grow Rich, and I don't follow all the lessons perfectly, but a lot of those lessons, like I think about those every day. It's just like, all right, got to do this. We got to get this done. How are we going to get there? One of the things that really states out plainly is make a plan. Go over that plan until you memorize it. And eventually, subconsciously, you'll start to follow that plan without even realizing it. That takes a lot of hard work, a lot of repetition, a lot of going over the plan in your head and writing it out, reading it daily, things like that. But that, after I read that book and started applying those things, that really transformed where I was going in my life. And even though I make a lot more money now than I did then, and things are a lot more expensive, I still am able to navigate those things, because if I did not have that mindset shift, then I probably wouldn't be where I'm at now. So I think it all comes down to mindset, pushing through no matter what the adversity is.
Yeah, so I got questions listed here, but we can kind of jump around because you're hitting on some stuff. It says you're talking about mindset. So what mindset should young people adopt adopt to stay hopeful? Like, what does that mindset look like? You kind of talked about it just now with the Steve Harvey and this thing, but what mindset do they really need to stay hopeful?
First, you got to tell yourself every day, I am not a victim. It doesn't matter. I'm not trying to bring up any racial stuff. I'm just saying across the board for everybody. Everybody needs to have the mindset of, I am not a victim. What can I control? What can I do to start to change my situation? That is where it starts. If you don't get that part right, then nothing else will work. Everything will fail. It will. So I just can't express that enough. And I know I probably would say the same thing when it comes to mindset, but I just think everyone needs to have a mindset, not being a victim. Everyone needs to focus on what they can control instead of focusing on things they can't control. Like, for example, politicians. Yes, some things they do will make us angry. I see some things and I'm just like, what are we even doing? Are we even a serious nation? But I also realize that, hey, what this person is doing does not directly affect you. So do not put too much emotion into this. You need to focus on what you need to do to forward your life. And also, how can you help the people around you? So you shouldn't be completely self-centered, because that's not going to serve you in the end. I'm not saying help people to help yourself. I think you need to be genuine about it. But I think if everyone, like, say, for example, everyone worked at a job, it's just like, all right, what can I do to make this place better? And You try to do things and you plan things, and some things may work, some things may not. But you take those as lessons. Each failure teaches you a lesson that you can move forward from. I think a lot of people, especially people that I've talked to throughout my life, they just focus on, they fail once and that's all they can think about. They're like, I'm never doing this. I failed over and over. Well, ironically, most of the most successful people, they failed a lot.
Yep.
And then one day they just became successful.
So go ahead. You got something else? Go ahead.
Yes. I've seen wealthy people waste everything that they had, that their parents built, because of a mindset like that. So it's not just for poor people, average American people, upper class people. It's kind of something that everybody should subscribe to.
Not being a victim.
Yes. And that's in any walk of life. You go to your job, you don't feel like your boss likes you. Tell yourself, I'm not a victim. What can I do to make the relationship better? That's for everybody, not just for people I lead in their relation to me. That's advice I had to give myself. Hey, you're mad because this person did this. See it from their point of view and figure out what you can do to make things better. And I think if you put that responsibility on yourself, things will start to improve. Maybe not overnight, but I would say in about a year or two, you'll look back and be like, wow, I came such a long way.
Yeah. And see, that's that growth, that personal development, the critical thinking. Like, you don't just get to that point overnight. That takes time, energy, discipline, intentionality. Like, but I don't think most people want to change because they see how far they have to go. Instead of taking it day by day, decision by decision, moment by moment, they look and be like, man, I'm trying to be like him. And where I'm at right now, that almost looks impossible. Even like with losing weight or putting on muscle, getting in shape. Like, it's like you see the final product and you already know, like, man, I got to go through all this to get there. Right. Instead of saying one victory at a time, one day at a time, consistency. If I get up and go to the gym enough, one day I'll wake up and I'll see the results. But I have to just go one day at a time.
Yes.
You know, but like I said, we get so caught up and we don't fall in love with the journey, the process. Because if you fall in love with the process, you will eventually see the progress.
Yes.
You know, so
that's very hard to do too. Like, just focusing on the process. All right, do this. And I would agree, don't focus so much on the goal. Yes, you have the goal, you memorize the goal, but I think that's very important. I mean, Nick Saban said this, you got to fall in love with the process to win. He's the best college football coach of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm an Auburn fan. Never been an Alabama fan, but I listen to Nick Saban talk and I'm just like, dude, if he was my coach in high school, I would have ran through a wall.
Well, that's how it is when you have coaches that tap into, you know, that leadership, that accountability, you know, and they don't, and that ain't gonna sugarcoat it. You know, you gotta have coaches like that, man. I tell all the kids, I was like, look, as you get older, your coaches are going to get harder and harder on you. Mm-hmm. They're going to demand more and more from you. So if you can't take my yelling, and I'm dumbed it down because y'all are third and fourth graders. So if you can't take my yelling, my getting on to you, then you might as well not even step on the field in seventh, eighth grade and beyond. I was like, I'm trying to get you prepared, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally for where you're trying to go. Like, you need to be coached by different types of people, different types of coaching styles, because you don't know what your middle school coach is going to be like, your high school coach is going to be like, and if you're fortunate enough, what your college coach is going to be like. You don't know.
No.
So you might as well kind of, you know, start getting adjusted and start experiencing, you know, different types of coaches. That's just what I recommend, because I've had different types of coaches. I've had coaches that hardly ever yell. Then I have coaches that you can't get nothing right. You know, they yelling every time they can, screaming at you. I'm like, but you ain't even taught me nothing. You screaming at me thinking I should know this, but you ain't even taught me. Now, if you taught me, then yeah, you should be able to scream at me all you want to, because
Right.
it should be expected because you have went through it and show me what to do. But that's a whole nother topic in itself. Let me ask you this. So we're talking about goals, vision, plans, all these different types of things. So what is a realistic pathway or pathways forward right now for this generation? What can they do to get at least 1 or 2 steps closer to their goal?
So one thing I would say is work hard, especially for men, young men especially. Work hard early. Work hard early, but also along with that, make sure you're working hard at the right things. This is for all young people, men and women. When you're going to college, make sure you research what degree you're going into. There's a lot of people that go to school for liberal arts, and I'll just throw my opinion out there. I think colleges are kind of scamming young kids with that stuff because they go to school for liberal arts, so they get a master's degree in liberal arts, but they don't want to be a college professor. They want to go into some obscure field. Then they graduate and they wind up never using a degree. I think things that people should be looking at is computer technology. I think young people need to be finding out how they can leverage AI because, I mean, it's in the baby stages right now, but it's not going away. It's only going to keep going. And a lot of jobs that would require just mostly manual labor, simple jobs, a lot of entry-level jobs, they're getting phased out because companies are going to AI.
Yep.
Say, for example, music industry. I got a degree in entertainment business. So I think one of the things that people that are doing that now is they have to be super intentional about what they're going to do, where they're going with it. And they also have to consider what role AI is going to play in affecting their job. I'm using this as an example because I think this is one of the industries that will leverage AI dramatically. Actually, Timbaland, legendary producer, he's using AI to put singers on his songs. I mean, that's kind of troubling if you're a music artist that hasn't made it yet. I mean, you're going to be competing with a computer
that's got perfect pitch, perfect tone.
Yes, it never makes any mistakes. It'll do everything the record labels want it to. They have millions and billions of dollars, so obviously they can pump that stuff out to an audience. I know this is kind of going on a tangent, but I predict in the next 15 years, there will be a #1 song that will be completely AI.
There's a song right now that was there was a song not too long ago. I don't know if it was gospel or it was a song that was AI and it was #1 already. So it's already happening.
Yeah.
Only difference is they can't tour because you may be using my voice, but now I can actually take that song and perform it myself when I go on tour.
Right.
But that's crazy. Yeah, that's already happening.
Yeah.
Dude, I can't sing a lick. And there's an app right now that can record my voice just talking or whatever, how I sound, and I can type my lyrics up, or I could tell AI, create me a song based on blah, 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 and it will create it with my voice.
Yeah.
And I suck. I can be better than Martez Hill if I use the right app. How crazy is that?
I mean, that's pretty crazy, but I mean, this is what the future is. So I really think people, especially young people, they need to do a better job of looking 20 years down the road. Mm-hmm. I did not do a great job of that when I was 18. I wish I had people around me that were telling me, hey, you need to think about when you're 30, 40. And I finally remember this Steve Harvey thing I was going to say. So he said, in your 20s, work really hard so in your 30s, you can reap the benefits of that labor. Do not go out to the bar every single weekend. And yes, you're listening to someone that went to the bar often. Now, I never went and had a $250 tab because I wanted to buy every girl in the bar a drink. But I just think you should do those things sparingly, go with friends. If you're all going, I just wouldn't go just to have a good time. Also, on something not related to financials, the other side of that is you're never going to find the person that you're going to marry in a bar. It's not going to happen. With that being said, I'll circle over to what young people also need to focus on. Do not have children out of wedlock. I know there's a lot of people that's going to hear that. It's going to be like, it's being judgmental. If it's already happened, there's nothing you can do about that. But I'm saying if you do not have kids, you're single, please get married before you have children. That is one of the biggest predictors of whether you will be in poverty or not. If you wait till you're married to have a child, you'll be better equipped because husband, wife, team, let's face it, couples they're both having to work now. It's really hard for most people to be a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home mom right now because things are so much more expensive than what they have been. So unless you get one of those really high-paying jobs where you make $300K a year, I'm not really sure that's a realistic proposition. I would actually tell every young person, also make a plan to where if you are a couple and you're looking at getting married, come up with a way where you can together make at least $200,000. I think that's where you can be comfortable, lay some groundwork, set a foundation for your future children, things like that. But
yeah, especially in the Huntsville area, I mean, and that's living really, really comfortable. You're able to have a nice place to stay. You were probably able to have one car note. You're able to save some money. You're able to do vacations.
Yes.
You're able to put your kids in travel sports, things like that. So that would definitely take care of that type of lifestyle. It also depends on like what your appetite is. You know, like, do you want to have like $1,000, $1,200 car note, or are you okay with just driving, you know, a nice car at $500 a month? And one thing I like to tell people, especially couples, is try not to have two car notes at the same time if you already have kids. Now, if both of you guys, you know, if y'all are just newlyweds and you got the money coming in, you don't have kids, go ahead and get that car now. Don't you? Because once you have a kid, stuff changes.
Yes.
And it's one of those things like unless you're in it, it's really hard to explain it. But one kid can easily cost you if you don't have a babysitter, if both parents have to work, you have to send one to a daycare or a sitter. A sitter or a daycare alone could cost you anywhere from $400 to $1,000 a month, depending on where you at. And that's not including diapers, wipes, or the food. So just think about that.
Yes.
You know, but let me ask you this. Let me see what question I wanted to go with. We talked about the realistic pathways, talk about the mindset. Let's go back to the mental and emotional toll. You kind of hit on that. You was like depression. Like, what does that mental and emotional toll look like on the younger generation when it comes to trying to find these jobs and trying to get their career started, what does that look like day to day? You know, what do you see?
So I'm going to draw a lot from personal experience with this. It's going to take me a lot to say, but there were times where I would keep busy just so I didn't feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be at those moments. Also, I think it's hard when young people don't really know how to move up that ladder, or to actually progress. So say you work somewhere, we'll use Walmart for an example, and say you've been there for 6 years and you work hard, but you're still stuck in the same position and you have no idea how to step up to the next one. Or say maybe those people have tried, but maybe they struggle with interpersonal skills or just whatever reason that maybe might not completely be in their control. I mean, in a lot of those moments, people feel defeated and they kind of give up. I think people lose meaning when they feel like they're just doing the same thing and there's no point to it all.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember there were times where I'm just like, well, I'm working 2 jobs. What is the point? I don't even feel like I can get ahead. What do I need to do? Do I need to go work for a railroad? Do I need to go to this manufacturing plant and work 80 hours a week? Those things just gives you a sense of hopelessness and then also anxiety. So say that you get paid and say your check is $1,200, but your rent's $800 and your rent's due the same day that you get your check. Well, that's 3/4 of your check already gone. And you hadn't even had it for a day. That can cause a lot of stress because it's like, well, I got this, I got phone, I got gas, I got all this stuff, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for it going through the next 2 weeks. And this is especially for people that don't use credit cards.
That's a whole nother ball game right there.
Yeah, I would. I know I'm bouncing around, but I also think that young people should try to avoid credit as much as they can. There are ways to build credit safely, but you got to know that a lot of credit lenders, your interest rates are going to be ridiculously high. I had a credit card one time where the interest rate was 26%.
Yeah, that's
and I'm
normal.
just like,
that's normal, bro.
I only spent like $75 on this. I had a $600 limit. What is happening? And it's just, if you deal with credit, especially as a young adult, you've got to be very careful with it. You got to be mindful about the things that you get from lenders and what kind of lending you receive. I know a lot of people, especially in the lower income bracket, they get payday loans. That is the biggest scam in America. I think those should be illegal. They don't really help anybody. Yeah, they help for like a day, but then they got to pay it back in 2 weeks.
And it's like they have like 45, 50, 70% interest on those. Like it's through the roof what those interest rates are.
Yes. And unfortunately, I had a few of those between 18, 19, and 20. And after that experience, I was like, I will never do a payday loan. I actually paid one off, and the lady looked at me and she said, "Oh, you're paying this off. You'll be back in 2 months."
Wow.
And I looked at her and I was just like, I didn't say anything, but in my head, I was like, you will never see my face again.
I think I've seen a lot of times when people do the payday loans is, me personally, from my experience, just watching and observing, I think that people, because of social media and other reasons, they like to live above their means. And it's like they're in competition to compete with what they see on, a screen. And they go out and take these loans and get these credit cards and do these different things. Now, I can see if you got a credit card and you're trying to hustle and you're trying to build a business and, that mindset, I get it. But if you're just trying to buy stuff, things just so you can look a certain way and feel good about yourself, then you need to take a step back and do a re-examining of yourself, because that's dangerous. And I know a lot of people fall into that. So it's like, but you don't have to be like everybody else. You can be different. You can set a different standard for your home. Like, look, like you said, I'm gonna grind now. I'm gonna enjoy life. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna grind, but I'm gonna enjoy life. But then I'm really gonna enjoy life once the grind is over and I can just kind of coast. Like you said, in your 20s, hustle, get it in, do what you gotta do. You can stay up late. You're young. But when you get your 30s and 40s, it's time for you to start enjoying that. Be
Right.
smart and work hard in your 20s, and then in your 30s and your 40s and on forward, you can kind of coast and enjoy what you started back in your early years. You got anything? I mean, we pretty much, man, knocked out everything. You got anything that you want to leave or say or tie up before we get up out of here?
Yeah. So expounding on what you said, unfortunately, in our 20s, we party, we drink. We don't really focus on God that much, even though we may make efforts to.
Mm-hmm.
We always put our attention on other things. And then when we're 30, we're like, oh, crap. Or I'll say more like 28, 29. It's just like, oh, crap, what have I done? I've got to fix this now. And then you work really hard for the next 10 years. Then you're 38. Then you start to see a light at the end of the tunnel. I think now the biggest point I want to make is I think young people have less margin for error.
Mm-hmm.
I think if financial errors are made throughout the decade of their 20s, it's going to be that much harder to climb out of that once they hit 30 and they're working all this overtime or working multiple jobs. I know a lot of people that work multiple jobs. I know a lot of single moms that work multiple jobs. And a lot of them, it's not their fault. That's biggest reason I said don't have kids outside of wedlock, because if those things break apart after the child is here, it's really hard on the mother and she's stressed. That's not a fun environment for a kid to be in.
Mm-mm.
I would know. I've seen some of that stuff in my younger years. A lot of it is stress and frustration that the kids just somehow, or a lot of times, have to bear the brunt of. And then that leads to issues, and it's just a compound effect. And then I want to mention your other point. You know, most people try to live above their means. That is true. As I've gotten older, it's just like, I mean, I looked at buying an SUV like 2 years ago, and I was like, this car payment's going to be $900. Is it worth it? It's just like, I work 70 hours a week. I'm only going to drive it home to sleep and wake up and go back to work. That's not worth $900 just so people can tell you have the nicest car. You'd be better off getting a 3 or 4 year old car that is in good condition and that is very reliable, that you can get several years out of. I think everyone, even married couples with children, should follow that. And also, I definitely agree with you on the not having more than one car note. So me and my wife, she doesn't have a car payment. Unfortunately, I do. I wish I didn't. But I'm trying to hurry up and pay that off. So if she wants to get a new car, it's just like, okay, let's do that instead of, no, we're not going to do that because I got this really expensive car payment that I can barely afford that takes half of my check. And then I get my second payment of the month, and 70% of that is going to rent and utilities and food and things like that. Just don't do it, especially in your marriage, because financial pressures will strain your marriage.
Yes, sir.
So I'll just kind of close with that.
You good? He's like, I gotta close with that. I thought you was gonna keep going. You good?
Yeah.
My man said he good. So the right time is now. Like, whatever you're trying to do, whatever move you're trying to make, we always think, well, when the time gets here, when the right time. No, the right time is now. It's best to move, make a decision, get your goal, your vision, your plan, write it down, get you an accountability partner, get you a team of young men and women around you that's going to motivate you and just kind of pick you up when you don't feel like doing it, and find you a why. Like, why do you want to do what you're doing? Find that why, whether it's going, once you get your why, you may have to go to trade school. You may have to learn a skill. You may have to learn something on YouTube. You may have to get a side hustle. You may have to start a business. We don't know what that thing is, but we just hope with this conversation tonight that we bring to light that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. But in order to see the end of the tunnel, you got to start digging. And I think a lot of times we sit on the sideline and we don't get in the trenches. So get in the trenches, understand that it is going to suck for a while. It's going to be tough. It's going to hurt. You may go through some bouts of anxiety and fear, but that's okay. Push through it. Do it anyway. All right, so that's our time. We checking out with the Rescue Me Project, obviously sponsoring us. But this is Lonzo Jones, Elevated Chat Room. Elevate your mind, elevate your life. I want to give a special thanks to my guy, Mr. Martez Hill, for coming through. Our topic for tonight was, see, I thought I had it on my paper, but I got it right here. Priced out: how young people can build a future in an affordability crisis. In other words, you guys can do it. There's hope. You guys be blessed. We out.